My name is Morgan Taylor, and at 31, I never expected to be standing in the rain outside my childhood home, homeless, after supporting my family financially for 6 years. The fire had taken everything, but nothing prepared me for the sound of my mother laughing when I asked for help. "This isn't a shelter, Morgan," she said. That moment changed everything. By morning, my decision to cut them off financially left my phone blazing with 69 missed calls. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if family betrayal stories make your blood boil. I grew up in Chicago, in what most would call a struggling middle-class family. My parents Evelyn and Richard Taylor worked hard, but we always seemed to be one paycheck away from disaster. I have two siblings. Diane is 2 years older than me, and Ryan is 4 years younger. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom house in a decent neighborhood, but keeping up appearances was always important to my mother. Life took a dramatic turn when my father lost his job at the manufacturing plant when I was 16. He had been there for 20 years, and the shock hit our family like a tidal wave. The severance package lasted 3 months, and then the panic set in. My mother took extra shifts at the department store where she worked, but it was nowhere near enough to maintain our lifestyle. That summer before my junior year of high school, I got my first job at the local grocery store. I still remember the pride I felt bringing home my first paycheck of $230. It was supposed to be for my college fund, but instead it went straight to our electric bill that was 2 weeks overdue. By senior year, I was working 30 hours a week while maintaining a 3.8 GPA. My older sister Diane had already started college and needed money for books and living expenses. My parents, especially my mother, constantly reminded me how smart I was, how responsible, how they could always count on me. Their golden child, they called me. Meanwhile, Ryan enjoyed his teenage years without the pressure I faced. He played sports, went to parties, and struggled academically without consequences. When I brought up the disparity in expectations, my mother would say, "You are just naturally more capable, Morgan. We don't need to worry about you." Despite the financial strain, I managed to secure a partial scholarship to State University. The remaining tuition was covered by student loans in my name and my continued work schedule. During those 4 years, I juggled 3 part-time jobs: morning shifts at the campus coffee shop, weekend receptionist at a law firm, and online tutoring at night. Every semester break, I picked up extra hours to help with household expenses back home. My relationship with my mother had always been complicated. In my childhood, we were close. She taught me to bake, read me stories, and brushed my hair before school. But as financial pressures mounted, she transformed. Her warmth became conditional on my usefulness. The more I helped financially, the more affection she showed. When I could not give enough, her disappointment was palpable. College graduation should have been my moment of triumph and independence. I had landed a job at Marshall & Reed, a prestigious marketing firm in downtown Chicago. The starting salary of $50,000 felt astronomical after years of minimum wage jobs. I rented a tiny studio apartment and planned to focus on building my career. 3 weeks after starting my job, my father called. His attempt at starting a small landscaping business had failed, and they were 3 months behind on the mortgage. Could I help just until they got back on their feet? Of course I said yes. It was only temporary, I told myself. That first transfer of $1,500 to my parents was the beginning of a pattern that would continue for the next 6 years. Each family emergency became my responsibility. Each financial shortfall became my problem to solve. When Diane decided to switch majors, requiring an extra year of college, I covered the additional tuition. When Ryan totaled his car and needed a replacement to get to his part-time job, I provided the down payment. When my mother maxed out her credit cards, I paid the minimum balances to prevent collections. My friends noticed what was happening before I did. My college roommate, Catherine Wilson, invited me for coffee about a year into my job. "Morgan," she said gently, How much of your salary are you actually keeping for yourself? I remember feeling defensive. They are my family, Catherine. What am I supposed to do? Let them lose their house. She looked at me with concern. There is a difference between helping during an emergency and becoming their permanent solution. You are enabling them. I dismissed her concerns, but her words lingered. Another friend, Jasmine Rodriguez, from work, noticed I brought lunch from home every day and never joined colleagues for after-work drinks. When I admitted I was sending most of my discretionary income to my family, she was blunt. They are using you as their personal ATM, she said. Your brother just posted pictures of his beach vacation on social media while you cannot even afford to get your hair done. I laughed it off, but deep down, I recognized the truth in her words. Still, family obligation ran deep. My mother had instilled in me since childhood that family always comes first. We take care of our own, she would say. What I did not realize then was that in her mind, taking care of our own meant me taking care of everyone else. As my career at Marshall and Reed advanced, so did my family's reliance on my income. By the end of my first year, I was promoted to senior marketing associate with a salary increase to $60,000. My mother called the day after I shared the news. We are so proud of you, Morgan, she said. Then, without missing a beat, now that you have got that nice raise, do you think you could help with Diane's wedding? She and Travis have set a date, and you know we cannot afford anything nice. The pattern continued with each career advancement. At 26, I became a marketing manager with a salary of $75,000. At 28, I was promoted to senior marketing manager at $90,000. By 30, I reached marketing director with a salary of $110,000. Each promotion announcement was met with congratulations, quickly followed by new financial requests. My father's health scare when I was 27 added medical bills to the growing list of expenses. What started as chest pain resulted in a 3-day hospital stay and tests that revealed nothing serious but generated $8,000 in out-of-pocket costs after insurance. I paid it in full without question. Meanwhile, Diane's lavish wedding cost $22,000, of which I contributed $15,000. She wanted a designer dress, an open bar, and a honeymoon in Hawaii. Her husband Travis worked in sales but somehow never seemed to have money to contribute to their expenses. After their wedding, they bought a house they could not afford, and I found myself helping with their mortgage twice in the first year. Ryan never quite found his footing professionally. He bounced between jobs in retail food service and eventually landed a position as an administrative assistant. His apartment rent of $1,400 monthly was beyond his means, so I subsidized it with $500 each month. His car payment, insurance, and cell phone bill also became my responsibility. When he decided to take classes at community college, I paid the tuition and bought his textbooks. My mother's spending habits were perhaps the most frustrating. She maintained appearances in the neighborhood with regular salon visits, new clothes, and household decorations. Her 3 credit cards were perpetually near their limits, and I paid minimum balances totaling $700 monthly to keep them from collections. Twice I paid them off completely after she promised to stop overspending, but within months, they were maxed out again. My father's failed landscaping business left a trail of debt that I gradually absorbed. Equipment loans, business credit cards, and taxes accumulated to nearly $30,000 over 3 years. Each time I paid off a business debt, he would thank me profusely and promise to make it up to me someday. The monthly breakdown of my financial support to my family looked like this. Parents' mortgage, $2,000. Mother's credit card minimums, $700. Father's business debt payments, $800. Ryan's rent subsidy, $500. Ryan's car payment and insurance, $450. Diane's occasional mortgage helped $1,000 average over a year. Miscellaneous family expenses, $600. That totaled approximately $6,050 monthly, or $72,600 annually. Even with my six-figure salary, this left me living paycheck to paycheck in my small one-bedroom apartment that cost $1,400 monthly. I drove a 10-year-old Honda Civic that I purchased used, while my brother had a newer Ford Escape that I made payments on. My retirement account contributions were minimal. My emergency fund contained just $3,000. My own student loans remained in forbearance because I could not afford the payments while supporting everyone else. The emotional toll was even greater than the financial one. Every family gathering became a subtle negotiation about money. My mother would mention bills in passing. My father would take me aside to discuss the latest business opportunity that needed just a little capital. Diane would complain about her mortgage or property taxes. Ryan would talk about wanting to travel or move to a better apartment. Through it all, I maintained the role of responsible provider. I created spreadsheets tracking every payment. I set up automatic transfers to their accounts. I managed payment plans with creditors. I became not just a daughter and sister, but a financial advisor, bank, and safety net, all in one. There were moments when resentment surfaced. At Diane's baby shower, she complained about the cost of nursery furniture while wearing a designer watch. When I mentioned I was considering taking a vacation, my mother asked if that money might be better used helping Ryan with his car repair. During family dinners, they discussed restaurants and experiences I could never afford while simultaneously relying on my support. My apartment remained sparsely furnished, my wardrobe functional rather than fashionable. I declined social invitations that involved spending money. Dating became nearly impossible as I was embarrassed to explain my financial situation to potential partners. How could I admit that at 31 with a six-figure income, I could barely afford dinner at a nice restaurant? Catherine and Jasmine continued to express concern. They witnessed my exhaustion, my constant stress about money, and my inability to build my own life. Catherine once asked if I had calculated how much I had given my family over the years. When I admitted I had not, she suggested I might be shocked by the total. Jasmine was more direct, telling me I was being exploited by the people who should love me most. I defended my family out of habit, but privately I had begun to wonder if they would ever become self-sufficient. If my support was truly helping, or simply enabling dysfunction. If their love for me was genuine or conditional upon my financial assistance. Still, I continued the payments, continued the support, continued to be the responsible one, the dependable one, the golden child who sacrificed her own future to ensure everyone else's comfort. I told myself it was temporary just until things got better, just until they could stand on their own. I never imagined it would take a disaster to show me the truth about my family. The fire started at 2:15 a.m. on a Tuesday in October. I awoke to the blaring of the alarm and the acrid smell of smoke seeping under my apartment door. Disoriented from sleep, I grabbed my phone and wallet from the nightstand and slipped on the shoes beside my bed. The smoke was thickening rapidly as I made my way to the door. When I touched the doorknob, it was warm but not hot. I opened it cautiously to find the hallway filling with gray smoke. Mrs. Patterson from across the hall was already in the corridor in her nightgown, clutching her small dog. "We need to get out now," she coughed, pointing toward the emergency exit. The stairwell was our only option, as the elevator was never to be used during a fire. As we descended from the fourth floor, other residents joined the evacuation. The smoke grew denser with each flight of stairs. By the time we reached the ground floor, we were all crouching low, covering our mouths with whatever we had. Outside, the night air was cold against my skin. I was wearing only pajama pants and a thin t-shirt. Neighbors gathered on the street watching as flames began to visibly engulf the east wing of the building where my apartment was located. Fire trucks arrived with sirens wailing, and firefighters rushed into action with hoses and equipment. I stood there in shock watching as everything I owned burned. My clothes, my furniture, my laptop, with all my work files, the photo albums from my childhood, the small collection of jewelry from my grandmother, the books I had accumulated since college, all of it gone in less than an hour. The Red Cross arrived to assist displaced residents. They provided blankets, water, and information about emergency housing. A representative took my information and explained that they could offer a voucher for 3 nights at a nearby hotel. After that, I would need to contact my insurance company and make longer-term arrangements. I called my insurance provider from the hotel room at 6 a.m. The agent was sympathetic but explained the process would take time. They would need fire department reports, a detailed inventory of lost items, and documentation of my lease agreement. The immediate emergency assistance in my policy amounted to $1,000, which would be deposited to my account within 48 hours. For someone who had just lost everything, it felt like a pittance. My boss at Marshall and Reed was understanding when I called to explain my situation. She granted me a week of emergency leave and assured me my job was secure. Human Resources would expedite replacement of my company laptop and phone. In the quiet of the hotel room, the reality of my situation began to sink in. I had $3,000 in my emergency fund, $1,000 coming from insurance, and the hotel covered for 3 nights. After that, I would need to find a place to live, buy clothes, toiletries, and everything else required for daily life. The full insurance claim would likely take weeks to process, and even then might not cover the full value of what I had lost. For the first time in my adult life, I faced a crisis I could not solve alone. I needed help, and there was only one place I could turn: my family, the people I had supported faithfully for 6 years. I called my mother first, my voice breaking as I explained what had happened. Her initial reaction seemed appropriate. "Oh my God, Morgan, are you hurt? Where are you staying?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. "I am fine physically, just in shock. The Red Cross put me up in a hotel for 3 nights. But after that, I am not sure what I will do," I explained. "Well, you will come stay with us, of course," she said without hesitation. "We will make up the guest room. Do you need us to come get you?" Relief flooded through me. For all the complicated dynamics in our relationship, when it really mattered, my mother was there for me. I arranged to come to their house on Friday when my hotel voucher expired. The next 2 days passed in a blur of insurance calls, paperwork, and attempting to recreate an inventory of everything I had lost. I purchased a few basic clothing items and toiletries with my emergency fund money. Friends from work brought me lunch and offered moral support. Catherine insisted on lending me some clothes until I could replace my wardrobe. By Friday afternoon, I had checked out of the hotel and was driving the 30 minutes to my parents' house in my old Honda, which had thankfully been parked on the street away from the fire. The back seat contained 2 plastic bags of newly purchased necessities and a small suitcase of borrowed clothes. Everything I owned in the world now fit in the back of my compact car. As I drove, I felt a complex mix of emotions: gratitude that my family could take me, and embarrassment at needing their help after years of being the provider, and a strange sense of role reversal. For once, I would be the one receiving assistance instead of giving it. I arrived at my parents' house around 4:30 p.m. The familiar 2-story colonial looked the same as always, well maintained, with seasonal decorations adorning the porch. My father's car was in the driveway alongside my brother's Ford Escape that I still made payments on. I parked behind them, gathered my meager belongings, and approached the front door with a sense of homecoming. What I could not know as I rang the doorbell was that this moment would change my understanding of family forever. My mother opened the door wearing a blue cashmere sweater I had given her last Christmas. Her hair was freshly styled and she wore full makeup despite it being a Friday afternoon at home. Something in her expression shifted when she saw me standing there with my bags, a flicker of annoyance quickly masked. "Morgan, you are early," she said, glancing at her watch. "We were not expecting you until dinner time." "The hotel checkout was at noon," I explained. "I have been running errands since then." Is it a problem that I am early? She hesitated just long enough for discomfort to settle in my stomach. No, come in. We are having a few people over for dinner, that is all. I stepped into the foyer and noticed the dining room table was set with the good china and crystal glasses. A flower arrangement I definitely had not paid for sat as a centerpiece. Who is coming for dinner? I asked, suddenly feeling very out of place in my jeans and plain sweater, the only clean outfit I had. Just the Hendersons and Patels, my mother replied casually, as if hosting a dinner party was perfectly normal when her daughter had just lost everything in a fire. Oh, and Diane and Travis are coming too. It is just a small get-together we planned last week. I stood there holding my bags, uncertain what to do next. My mother seemed to suddenly notice them and frowned. You can put those in the basement for now, she said. The guest room is not quite ready. I have been so busy preparing for tonight. The basement. Not the guest room she had promised, not even my old bedroom, but the unfinished basement with its concrete floor and exposed pipes. I thought you said you would prepare the guest room for me, I said, trying to keep the hurt from my voice. She laughed. It was not a warm laugh of affection or even an apologetic one. It was dismissive, almost scornful. Morgan, really? This is all very sudden. We cannot just rearrange everything because of your situation. The guest room is set up for the book club meeting tomorrow, and we are not running a shelter here. Not running a shelter. The words hit me like a physical blow. 6 years of financial support, $72,000 annually, more than $400,000 total. All the sacrifices, the missed opportunities, the delayed dreams, and now when I needed them for the first time, I was an inconvenience, a burden they had not planned for. From the living room, my father called out, "Is that Morgan?" His voice held none of the concern one would expect from a father whose daughter had just lost everything. I walked into the living room, still clutching my bags. My father sat in his leather recliner that I had purchased 2 years ago when the old one broke. He barely looked up from the golf game on the 60-inch television I had bought for their anniversary. "Hey kiddo, tough break about the fire," he said, eyes still on the screen. "Your mother tells me you need a place to stay for a bit." Before I could respond, my brother Ryan emerged from the kitchen with a beer in hand. He was wearing a new North Face jacket I definitely had not funded. "Morgan," he exclaimed with what seemed like genuine warmth. Then immediately, "Hey, the insurance is going to cover your car payment for me this month, right? Since you have got all those insurance people involved already." I stared at him, unable to process the selfishness of his question. My sister Diane arrived, then entering without knocking her husband Travis behind her. "Oh good, you are here," she said, looking me over critically. "Mom said you might need some clothes. I brought a few old things I was going to donate anyway." She thrust a paper bag toward me, not bothering to ask if I was okay or express any sympathy about my situation. I stood in the center of the living room, surrounded by my family, feeling utterly alone. They continued their conversations around me, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. My mother discussed the dinner menu with Diane. My father and Travis talked about golf scores. Ryan texted on his phone, occasionally chuckling at something on the screen. Not one of them asked how I was feeling. Not one offered practical help or emotional support. Not one acknowledged the trauma of losing everything I owned. In that moment, a montage of memories flashed through my mind. The countless times I had transferred money to their accounts, the vacations they took while I worked overtime, the luxuries they enjoyed that I denied myself, the emergencies solved that they created. "Excuse me," I said, my voice stronger than I expected. "I just lost everything I own in a fire. I am essentially homeless. I have been supporting all of you financially for 6 years, and not one of you has asked if I am okay or offered to help me." The room fell silent. My mother looked annoyed rather than contrite. "Morgan, we are letting you stay here, are we not?" she said, as if she was making an enormous sacrifice. "In the basement," I replied. Because you are not running a shelter. My father cleared his throat uncomfortably. Now, Morgan, your mother has the book club tomorrow. We cannot just rearrange everything. My sister added, plus, Travis and I might need help with our property taxes next month. We were counting on you for that. It was the most honest statement any of them had made. They were counting on me. They had always counted on me. Not as a daughter or sister who needed love and support, but as a reliable source of income, a solution to their created problems, a safety net for their financial irresponsibility. I think I need some air, I said, walking out the front door before any of them could respond. In my car, I finally allowed the tears to come. 6 years of supporting them financially, emotionally, practically. 6 years of sacrificing my own needs, wants, and future. And when I needed them for once truly needed them, they had shown me exactly what I meant to them. I drove back to the hotel and used my credit card to book another 3 nights. In the quiet of the room, I made a decision that would change everything. If my family saw me only as a financial resource, then perhaps it was time to show them what life would be like without that resource. The next morning, I woke with clarity and purpose. The hurt and shock had crystallized into resolve. I would reclaim my financial independence and my self-respect in one decisive action. First, I needed professional assistance. I called Patricia Grant, a financial advisor I had consulted briefly when I received my last promotion. I explained my situation without emotion, laying out the extensive financial support I had provided to my family and my new circumstances after the fire. Morgan, she said, after I finished, what you have described is financial abuse. Your family has been exploiting your generosity and sense of obligation for years. This stops now for their sake as much as yours. We scheduled an appointment for that afternoon. In her office, we methodically reviewed every financial connection between my family and me. The list was longer than even I had realized. My parents' mortgage, I had been making direct payments to their bank. My mother's 3 credit cards, I had been paying minimums monthly. My father's business debts, I had set up automatic payments from my account. My brother's rent, direct deposit to his landlord. My brother's car payment and insurance, automatic withdrawals. My sister's mortgage assistance, transfers to her account as needed. Family cell phone plan, under my name, 5 lines, only 1 used by me. Patricia outlined a clear strategy for disentanglement, prioritizing my financial security while cutting off the support that had become expected rather than appreciated. First, we called my bank to stop all automatic payments and transfers related to my family. The customer service representative seemed concerned by the number of transactions we were canceling, but processed the requests efficiently. Next, we contacted the cell phone company to remove all lines except mine from my account. This would give my family 30 days to establish their own plans before service was discontinued. For the credit cards, Patricia advised against paying off the balances as I had done in the past. That would be my final act of enabling, she explained. Instead, I would make one last minimum payment and then remove myself from all accounts where I was an authorized user. The most complicated situation was my parents' mortgage. I had been making payments directly to the bank for so long that the mortgage company considered me a responsible party, though my name was not on the loan. Patricia helped me draft a letter to the mortgage company, clarifying that I would no longer be making payments and should not be contacted regarding the account. Throughout this process, I maintained a spreadsheet documenting every action taken, every account closed, every payment stopped. This was partly for my own records, and partly to have clear evidence should my family attempt to dispute my decisions. By late afternoon, we had completed most of the financial separation. Patricia helped me create a new budget, focused on rebuilding my life after the fire. The money that had been going to my family would now fund my emergency savings, a security deposit, and rent for a new apartment replacement of essential belongings, and eventually retirement contributions that were years behind schedule. Before leaving her office, I composed an email to send to all family members simultaneously. Patricia advised keeping it factual and unemotional. Dear family, due to my current circumstances following the fire that destroyed my apartment and all my possessions, I am no longer able to provide financial assistance to anyone. Effective immediately, I have discontinued all payments, transfers, and financial support previously provided. This includes mortgage payments, credit card payments, car payments and insurance, rent subsidies, cell phone plan contributions, miscellaneous expense coverage. You will need to make arrangements to cover these expenses yourselves going forward. I suggest contacting the respective companies immediately to establish payment plans in your own names. I need to focus on rebuilding my own life and financial security at this time. Morgan. I did not mention the betrayal I felt, or their callous response to my crisis. I did not enumerate the years of sacrifice or the total amount I had contributed. The facts would speak for themselves when the reality of their financial situation without my support became clear. That evening, I met with a leasing agent who had an available apartment in a secure building across town. The rent was $1,500 monthly, slightly more than my previous place, but within my new budget now that I was not supporting 5 additional adults. The security deposit of $2,000 would come from my emergency fund, which I was determined to rebuild as quickly as possible. I signed the lease with a sense of both anxiety and liberation. For the first time in 6 years, my financial decisions would benefit me alone. I would no longer track my family's bills or worry about their financial emergencies. I would no longer sacrifice my own needs to fulfill their wants. Catherine and Jasmine helped me move into the new apartment the following day. The space was empty, except for an air mattress Catherine brought and some basic kitchen supplies from Jasmine. They had also organized a small collection of clothes, toiletries, and household items from coworkers who had heard about my situation. I need to replace everything, I said, looking around the empty rooms. One step at a time, Jasmine replied. For now you have the essentials and your freedom. That night on the air mattress in my empty new apartment, I felt a strange peace despite my circumstances. I had lost everything but was somehow gaining something more valuable: self-determination, boundaries, and the opportunity to prioritize my own well-being. I sent the email to my family just before going to sleep, then turned off my phone. Whatever their reaction, I would face it in the morning after a night of uninterrupted rest. For the first time in years, I fell asleep without worrying about anyone else's financial problems. When I turned my phone back on at 7 a.m., it immediately began buzzing with notifications. 69 missed calls had accumulated overnight: 23 from my mother, 15 from my father, 18 from my sister, and 13 from my brother. The voicemail box was full, and text messages continued to arrive in real time. I made coffee in the single mug Jasmine had brought me and sat on the air mattress to review the messages chronologically. The progression told a story of its own. The first messages expressed confusion and demands for explanation. From Mom, 8:15 p.m. What is the meaning of this email? Call me immediately. From Dad, 8:20 p.m. Morgan, your mother is very upset. You need to call and explain yourself. From Diane, 8:32 p.m. Are you serious right now? We had an agreement about my property taxes. You cannot just back out. From Ryan, 8:45 p.m. My landlord just called saying the rent payment was declined. Fix this ASAP. As the night progressed, the tone shifted to anger and accusations. From Mom, 9:10 p.m. After everything we have done for you, this is how you repay us. I raised you better than this. From Diane, 9:37 p.m. You are being incredibly selfish. Travis says you are probably committing some kind of fraud by stopping payments without notice. From Ryan, 10:15 p.m. My car payment is due in 3 days. If it is late, it will wreck my credit score. You are ruining my life over a temper tantrum. By midnight, the messages had evolved to threats and manipulation. From Dad 1148 p.m. Your mother is in tears. Her blood pressure is dangerously high because of your stunt. If anything happens to her, it will be on your conscience. From Mom 1207 a.m. If you do not call me back and fix this by morning, do not consider yourself part of this family anymore. From Diane 1234 a.m. I have talked to Aunt Susan and Uncle Mark. They agree you are being horrible. Everyone in the family will know what you have done. The final wave of messages sent in the early morning hours showed the beginning of desperation. From Ryan 545 a.m. Please, Morgan. I will be evicted. I have nowhere else to go. From Mom 610 a.m. We can talk about this. Maybe you are just stressed from the fire. Come home and we will figure something out. From Dad 630 a.m. The mortgage company called. They said the payment was declined. What are we supposed to do? I listened to selected voicemails, each more frantic than the last. My mother crying about betrayal. My father invoking family loyalty. My sister threatening legal action she could not possibly afford to pursue. My brother begging for just one more month of support. Not one message acknowledged my situation or offered help with my recovery from the fire. Not one recognized the years of sacrifice I had made. Their concern was entirely self-centered, focused on how my decision affected them rather than why I had made it. At 9 a.m., my phone rang again. It was my sister. I decided to answer. How could you do this? She demanded without preamble. We were counting on you for the property taxes. They are due next week. I am sorry you are in a difficult position, I replied calmly. I am no longer able to provide financial support to anyone. I have my own expenses to manage after losing everything in the fire. The fire was not our fault, she exclaimed. Why are you punishing us for something we had nothing to do with? I am not punishing you, I explained. I am prioritizing my own financial recovery. You and Travis will need to find another way to pay your taxes. She scoffed. Like what? We do not have $5,000 just sitting around. You might consider selling one of your cars or taking out a home equity loan, I suggested. These are options I have mentioned before. The conversation devolved from there, with Diane alternating between threats and guilt trips. I remained calm, repeating my position without anger or accusation. When she finally hung up, I felt drained but resolute. The next call came from my brother's landlord, who had somehow obtained my number from previous payments. He explained that Ryan had told him I would be calling to resolve the payment issue. I am sorry, but I will no longer be making payments on Ryan's behalf, I explained. He will need to make arrangements with you directly. 2 hours later, Ryan appeared at my new apartment. Catherine must have told him where I was staying. He looked disheveled and panicked. You cannot do this to me, Morgan, he said as soon as I opened the door. I will lose my apartment. My car will be repossessed. My phone is already showing a service interruption warning. I invited him in, offering him water in my single mug while I drank from a paper cup. Ryan, I have supported you financially for 6 years, I said gently. During that time, you have had multiple opportunities to increase your income or reduce your expenses. You chose not to do either. But I am your brother, he insisted. Family helps family. That is what you always said. When did you help me? I asked. When I lost everything in the fire. When did you offer assistance? He looked away, unable to meet my eyes. That is different. I do not have the resources you have. You have the resources I gave you, I pointed out. And when I needed help, you asked about your car payment. My sister arrived 30 minutes after Ryan left. Unlike our brother's emotional appeal, Diane came armed with calculated manipulation. Mom is talking about selling the house, she announced dramatically. Dad might have to come live with me and Travis. Is that what you want? I considered this. What I want is for all of you to take responsibility for your own finances the way I have had to do since I was 16. If selling the house is the responsible choice for their situation, then yes, that might be what needs to happen. She stared at me as if I had suggested something obscene. You have changed, she said accusingly. You used to care about family. I still care about family, I replied. But I have realized that my definition of caring and yours are very different. The confrontation with my parents came that evening. They arrived unannounced at 7 p.m. My mother still wearing her blue cashmere sweater, as if to remind me of past generosity. My father looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot in the doorway. The apartment was nearly empty with just the air mattress, a folding chair, and a small table I had purchased that afternoon. Their eyes widened as they took in my circumstances. So this is where you are living now, my mother said with a sniff. You left our perfectly good home for this. I left after you told me your house is not a shelter, I corrected her. Please come in if you would like to talk. They sat awkwardly on the folding chair and edge of the air mattress while I stood. Morgan, you have made your point, my father began. We understand you were upset about the guest room situation, but cutting us off financially without warning is extreme. It is not about the guest room, I explained. It is about 6 years of supporting everyone while sacrificing my own financial security. When I finally needed help, you showed me exactly where I stand in this family. My mother bristled. We gave you a roof over your head growing up. We paid for your food, your clothes. Until I was 16, I acknowledged. Since then, I have been contributing financially to this family. For the past 6 years, I have been the primary provider for not just myself, but all of you. The conversation circled for nearly an hour. They minimized my contributions, they exaggerated their support, they alternated between guilt threats and negotiations. Eventually, my mother played what she believed was her trump card. If you do not resume the financial support, we will have no choice but to cut ties with you completely, she said with finality. I looked at her, this woman who had raised me, who had taught me about family obligation and responsibility, who had benefited from my adherence to those principles for years. In her eyes, I saw not maternal love, but calculation, the evaluation of my worth, based solely on what I could provide. That would be your choice, I said quietly. I hope it does not come to that, but I will not resume financial support regardless of your decision. They left without resolution, my mother in tears that seemed more angry than sad, my father silent and defeated. As the door closed behind them, I felt a complex mixture of grief and liberation. The family dynamic that had defined my adult life was irrevocably changed, but perhaps it needed to be. The next day, an emergency family meeting was called at my parents' house. My Aunt Susan reached out to tell me about it, concerned by the conflicting stories she had heard. They are saying you abandoned them financially without warning because of some dispute over a guest room, she said. Is that true? I explained the full situation, the years of support, the fire, their response to my homelessness, and my decision to prioritize my own financial recovery. Good for you, she said, surprising me. To be honest, many of us in the extended family have wondered for years why you were carrying everyone. Your mother always made it sound like you were happy to do it, that it was your choice. It was my choice, I admitted, just not a fully informed one. I did not realize until now that the support was expected rather than appreciated. Aunt Susan attended the family meeting in my place and reported back. The truth had finally come out about the extent of my financial support and how it had been taken for granted. Some relatives were shocked by the total amounts involved. Others were appalled by my family's response to my crisis. A few defended my parents, sister, and brother, arguing that family obligation should supersede personal hardship. By the end of the meeting, the family had split into factions. Those who supported my decision offered practical help for my recovery from the fire: furniture, household items, clothing. Those who sided with my parents maintained that I had betrayed family values and should resume support immediately. I accepted the help offered and expressed gratitude for the understanding. For the first time in years, I felt supported rather than drained by family connections. It was not the outcome I had expected, but it was perhaps the one I needed most. 6 months after the fire, and my decision to cut financial ties with my immediate family, my life had transformed in ways I could not have imagined. My new apartment was now furnished simply but comfortably, with each item carefully chosen rather than accumulated out of necessity or convenience. The insurance claim had finally been settled, providing funds to replace essential belongings. Though I had lost irreplaceable mementos in the fire, I had gained something more valuable: perspective. My career at Marshall & Reed continued to flourish. Without the constant drain on my resources, I was able to focus more fully on my work. I received another promotion to Executive Marketing Director with a corresponding salary increase. This time, the additional income went toward building my emergency fund, contributing to my retirement account, and occasionally indulging in small luxuries I had denied myself for years. The journey of setting boundaries with my family had been painful but necessary. For the first 2 months after cutting them off, communication was minimal and strained. My mother attempted to maintain the estrangement she had threatened, believing I would eventually give in and resume support. My father called occasionally, always circling back to financial concerns despite my clear boundaries. Diane remained angry but was forced to find solutions to her financial problems without my intervention. Ryan struggled the most, visibly losing his apartment and having his car repossessed before moving in with a friend and finding a second job. By the 3rd month, reality had fully set in for all of them. My parents downsized to a smaller house they could actually afford on their income. The sale of their previous home paid off outstanding debts and provided a small cushion for emergencies. My mother took on additional hours at the department store and stopped using credit cards entirely. My father found part-time work as a driver for a local delivery service, contributing steady income for the first time in years. Diane and Travis sold one of their cars and refinanced their mortgage to a more manageable payment. They both took on side gigs to cover their property taxes and other expenses. Ryan moved to a shared apartment with 3 roommates, cutting his living expenses by more than half. He found full-time employment at a warehouse with better pay and benefits than his previous job. Slowly, tentatively, our relationships began to rebuild on new foundations. The first family dinner after the cutoff was awkward but civil. We met at a moderately priced restaurant, each person paying for their own meal. The conversation carefully avoided financial topics, focusing instead on work developments, community news, and neutral subjects. My mother approached me privately after that dinner, her demeanor more humble than I had seen in decades. "I have been thinking about what happened after the fire," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "I was wrong to treat you that way. We had become so accustomed to your help that we forgot it was help, not obligation. I am sorry." It was not a complete acknowledgement of the years of exploitation, but it was a start. I accepted her apology with grace, but maintained my boundaries. As the months passed, our interactions became more natural. My family began to see me as a person, rather than a resource. They shared their successes in managing their finances independently. They expressed genuine interest in my life and recovery from the fire. They offered emotional support without financial strings attached. I established clear parameters for my involvement in family matters. I would provide advice when asked, but not solutions. I would participate in celebrations, but not fund them. I would offer emotional support, but not financial bailouts. These boundaries were tested occasionally, but held firm. My own healing process involved more than financial recovery. I had to examine the beliefs and patterns that had led me to sacrifice so much for so long. Therapy helped me understand the roots of my excessive responsibility and people-pleasing tendencies. I learned to recognize the difference between healthy giving and self-destructive sacrifice. I practiced saying no without guilt and yes without resentment. Perhaps the most profound change was in how I viewed myself in relation to others. For years, my value had been tied to what I could provide, what problems I could solve, what burdens I could carry. Now I understood that my worth was inherent, not earned through constant giving. This shift allowed me to form healthier relationships in all areas of my life. In my career, I became more assertive about my contributions and needs. In friendships, I practiced reciprocity rather than one-sided support. In dating, I sought partners who demonstrated balance and mutual care rather than those who needed rescuing or managing. 1 year after the fire, we gathered for Thanksgiving at my new apartment. It was the first family holiday I had hosted, and I approached it with both excitement and trepidation. Everyone contributed to the meal, bringing dishes, drinks, and desserts. The conversation flowed more easily than it had in years, with genuine laughter and connection. After dinner, my father raised his glass in a toast. To Morgan, he said, his voice thick with emotion, who taught us all that true family support means helping each other grow, not enabling each other to stay stuck. Thank you for the difficult lesson we needed to learn. Tears pricked my eyes as glasses clinked around the table. The journey had been painful, the relationships irreversibly changed, but something healthier had emerged from the ashes of the old dynamic. We were learning to be family in a way that nurtured rather than depleted, that supported growth rather than dependence. The fire that destroyed my apartment had illuminated truths I might otherwise have taken years to recognize. The crisis that left me temporarily homeless had ultimately led me home to myself, to boundaries that protected rather than isolated, to relationships based on authentic connection rather than transaction. I realized that sometimes the most loving thing we can do for others is to stop solving their problems and instead allow them to develop their own strength and resilience. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for ourselves is to recognize when giving has become harmful rather than helpful. The lesson was painful, but transformative. True love empowers rather than enables. True family supports growth rather than dependence. True boundaries protect connection rather than prevent it. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with people you love? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories about family dynamics and personal growth. Remember that sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most necessary healing. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you strength in your own path toward healthy relationships and self-respect.